Well, hello, everybody. We're live. Welcome to Self-Publishing Insiders, where today I've got Becca Syme is in the house.
In the house.
In the house. Well, in her
Yay.
house.
Yeah, I'm
So
in
welcome,
my house.
Becca. For those of you who don't know Becca, so listen to this. I'm so excited. I get excited about a lot of our guests, but I'm a little extra excited today. So I'm going to try to calm down a little bit. So Becca is a Gallup-Certified Strengths Coach. She holds a master's in transformational leadership, right? She has nearly 18 years of experience in success training and coaching, right?
I feel old.
Now, no, no, that is a major plus. Listen to this. She has coached over 6,000 individual authors. Let me repeat that. 6,000 individual authors. So that means like the classes, the public speaking, the group settings, that doesn't count. We're talking about 6,000 individual authors. Many of those authors, as I understand, are in the 6 and 7-figure club. Um, Becca is the founder of the Better, Faster Academy, which we're all going to learn a little bit more about as well. And then she's also the author of several nonfiction books. She writes mysteries. I don't know how you find the time to do that, but you do that too. Welcome. Thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
being here.
I'm so excited to be here. I love in general doing podcasts, but there's something about live podcasts that are my favorite. Like I just love going wherever the crowd wants to go and kind of, following what everyone thinks is cool. So I'm excited.
Yeah. And plus, we get the dogs barking, people coming to the door, they're doing work outside. All that fun stuff too goes with the live settings.
I'm excited. And hi
Should
everyone
we
in the comments. Hi, hello. I can see everybody saying hi.
That's so cool. Thanks everybody for showing up too. We're going to try to get to all your comments and your questions as we go through this. As usual, today's a little bit special, not only because Becca's here, but Becca is going to do some live strengths training coaching with me. I took the strengths test. I was a little nervous about it. I'm just going to say that right up front. I was a little nervous, Becca. I was thinking it was going to say, nope, like it's going to come
You
back
have
with
no
this big
strength.
no strength. Just give up now. Go over there, sit in the corner, put this hat on. Yeah, that's what I was waiting for.
Yeah.
So I want to give folks, if you'll indulge me a little bit, just a little bit of background. Like what is Gallup trained? What is a Gallup trained strengths coach? What does that mean exactly?
So Gallup is kind of Gallup is the Gallup poll people, right?
Yeah.
So they're really big into information and specifically into collecting correct information that can tell you a story about something.
Yep.
And so the Clifton Strengths, which is the tool that we use to do this kind of coaching, is it is a personality metric, but it's not. It
Okay.
isn't something that someone said, hey, I think there's 4 types of people. So I'm going to make a test to figure out which type of person you are. What the original founder of this test did was he was so interested in the nuance of success and how success happened that he wanted to go out and interview a ton of the most successful people and figure out, like, how are you successful and is there any pattern there? So we interviewed hundreds of
Interesting.
thousands of people over the course of a decade trying to figure out what the patterns were, and then they
Hmm.
reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced until they found the 34 strengths. And then you have 5 of them in your top 5, right? Like you have
Yeah.
these combinations of talents that have produced behavior in some of the most successful people in the world. And then how are you like those people? So that's really a really different approach to personality tests for me, because it takes into account, again, the 6,000 individuals, right? Like it's the breadth of people,
Yeah.
and you see patterns differently on a bigger scale. Like you might watch 100 authors that you may be um, visibly seeing patterns that you think are attributed to something, but you just don't have enough volume to see that that pattern is very different when you
Yep.
get into the thousands and thousands and thousands of people of like watching them be successful. And so one of my favorite things about it is that it wasn't created because one person decided this is what happens.
Yeah.
And so that I like using that tool. And then what the coach does is we know the patterns well enough to be able to help you guide yourself more effectively, because we know things about your brain that we shouldn't know because of the test and the veracity of the test.
That's interesting.
And so I use the test as a tool to kind of shortcut, so I don't have to know you for 20 years to know
Yep.
all of these patterns that I would observe in you and how to
You
help
get a
you
pretty good
do
picture
better.
laid out in
Mhm.
front of you.
Real
That's
fast.
that's a legit study. I mean, over 100,000 people over a decade of
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Uh,
And they've studied 2 million over the course of the last 40 years. So, like, they keep amassing more and more data because that's what Gallup does. They want to validate the data, validate the data. So, they just keep amassing more and more data and making the tool itself more and more refined. So, like, the report that you got
mhm,
is individualized to you. So, based on your 34 talents, they wrote you a report
they
that
did.
is taking 2 million people's responses into account and trying to help you understand how you specifically are going to utilize these different talents. And the reports are like having somebody watching over your
It's pretty
shoulder.
eye-opening. It's pretty
Mhm.
eye-opening. When I got the report back, it was like, okay, here are your top 5 strengths. And as far as the order of these strengths, you're like one in, it'll tell you you're 1 in 33 million. Like the odds of somebody having these exact strengths in this exact order is like really far-fetched. So I thought that that was pretty interesting too.
Yeah.
Becca, why is
Mhm.
coaching important? Why do people need coaching? I mean, I've been writing for decades. Why do I need a coach?
Yeah, like, it really depends on the coach, obviously, because
Sure.
people who are coaching a system that they've developed tend to want to coach you in a specific direction. Like, they have an agenda for how to coach
Yeah.
you inside of the system. So that type of coaching is not something that I do, so I can't speak to that. But in terms of the type of coaching that I do, when when you are getting a result in your life
Hmm.
and you're either struggling with how to do something, or you have a big pain point, or there's something that you don't understand, like, why am I not getting this the same result that other people are getting when I do the same thing, right? Like, why is this not happening for me? Why am I not having success? There's so much that you don't know because you don't
Yeah.
know the millions and millions level data. So what I can do is go in and say, like, just as a for instance, like, you have a high responsibility talent, and responsibility people take ownership of the things that they commit to. So then they also tend to not put themselves first in situations. They tend to put
Mm.
other people first because they take those commitments to other people so seriously.
Yeah.
And that can have upsides as a writer, right? Like, if I make a promise to get that book out, I'm going to get that book out no matter what has to happen to me to make it happen. But sometimes it makes me have trouble that I can't see because I'm so scared that if I don't get the book out,
Yeah.
that I'm not going to be fulfilling my commitment. So I can get really myopic in those situations and not have perspective. And what the coach does is it helps come in and say, you're this is normal. Like, there's nothing scary about this at all.
Hmm.
You're doing exactly what you should be doing. Let's just shift you tiny bit this direction so that it's easier for you to get the result that you want, because there's something you don't know that's controlling your behavior, basically.
Yeah. One really short sentence you said as you were explaining that was, "I can tell you why,"
Yeah.
and,
Yeah.
and that was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
wow, that's pretty
Yeah.
amazing."
Yeah,
That's pretty
I
amazing.
the tagline of my podcast, right, is anyone can tell you what worked for
Hmm.
them and they can say it might not work for you, but they can't tell you why. And you'll hear them say this in their, talks, like, your mileage
It's
may
kind of like the
vary. This might not
disclaimer in a
work.
way.
Like a disclaimer, but I can tell you why it's not working. Like, I can tell you why the intellection brain, that you have a number 8 intellection, which is like thinking over and over something until you find certainty. A lot of intellections
I'm just
struggle with
laughing because I'm like,
the
Yeah.
A lot of intellections struggle with the test. Like they struggle to take the test
Yep.
because the test is inherently uncertain when you're in your middle range talents. Like when they're asking you about two different things, neither of which are really that important to you, or two of which
Mhm.
are really important to you, it's a struggle for intellection to reach that certainty of like, here's where I should answer, because it's such a quick, the test is timed, right?
Yeah.
So uh it produces a lot of stress. So then what I can do is say, well, that's normal. Intellection is just doing this clock thing. There's an action point at 12 o'clock. Once you hit the thinking, then gravity takes over and you're going to keep thinking until you come back to certainty again. So here are some ways that you can find certainty more quickly as a high intellection, rather than being at the mercy of that thinking strength and not knowing what's
Yep.
happening and not knowing what's happening, right?
Got it. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Gosh, so interesting. I've got
Yeah.
so many questions, but
Yeah.
it's not
Please
all
go
about
ahead.
me. Well, le- let me ask you this. Now you talk about aligning, and more specifically, I've heard on your podcast on the website, alignment, but more specifically, success alignment. Can we talk about that for a moment? Then I wanted to go from there into quitting.
Yeah.
And
Yes. Yes. And actually, those two
and-
things are related to each other,
cool.
right? So this is the way that most people make decisions, right?
Uh-huh.
There's a certainty and correctness scale, and it's
Okay.
uncertainty, certainty, and incorrect and correct, and they're on opposite sides. And we want uncertainty and incorrectness to be equal, and then the opposite to be correct and certain. And so we want those two scales to, when one goes up, the other goes up, right? So when I'm very,
Hmm.
very uncertain, I'm incorrect. And when I'm very, very certain, I'm correct. So the way that we try to make decisions in our author career is we listen to people who are very certain. You should do direct sales. You should be on TikTok, right?
So
And
true. Yeah.
how we make decisions about whether success is likely or not is how certain the person is who's talking to us. But the problem is that certainty and correctness are actually on an XY axis. So you can be completely and totally certain and 100% incorrect about what I should do, about what's good for me. And you can be absolutely and totally uncertain and 100% correct. So, and that's often what happens when I'm intuitive, right? Like I make an intuitive decision that I think is the right choice for me,
Hmm.
but I have no certainty about it because I'm worried that I don't have enough data, or I'm not a good decision maker, whatever it is that we think. Somebody smarter than me is more certain and they say the opposite thing. So we're making decisions almost by throwing spaghetti at the wall a little
Yeah.
bit. And what we want to do in strengths alignment is to say, no, that person is just really high focus. So you do not have high focus, and that is a focus behavior. So you need to just let that go. That's not a thing you need to worry about. You
Hmm.
can still have success. And in fact, you will likely be happier and more secure if you do things that your strengths benefit from. Like if you are doing things that make you feel more responsible
Hmm.
versus things that make you feel more, um, I don't know, significant, right?
Okay.
Like you're
Okay.
going to be more secure and happy if you're doing things that make you feel really responsible. And so just knowing that there's this, and I want to answer a couple of quick questions real quick in the
Sure.
middle of this.
Please.
So, being on any kind of neurodivergent spectrum does not affect the test. You can be on any neurodivergent spectrum and be fine taking the test. The one thing I would do is if you have test anxiety, I would turn the timer off. And you can call Gallup and they'll turn the timer off for you on your code. And then where you take the test is you can either take it from us if you want to, or you can go to gallup.com and you can buy a code. And then you can do what Jim did, right? You enter the code, you sit down for 30 minutes or a different time if you get the timer turned off. But I encourage
Yep.
you, if you can, to use the timer because so many strengths need the pressure of clarity.
Yeah.
And it's actually less positive of an experience of test taking. The test will be less correct if you don't need the timer. Some of us just need a little bit of like Make a quick decision. If it's not you, it's okay to pick the middle, right? Because
Mhm.
the two things are not opposites. They're two unrelated things. They're just testing which one is anyway. But that strengths alignment piece is in particular is about being able to say no to all the things that you should not be listening to, because the majority of things that you're hearing from people are actually things you shouldn't be doing. They're things
Yeah.
that you should kind of just sweep to the side and be like, that's great for you, that's wonderful for you, but that's not for me. It's not something I will excel at. And so the
That's
goal of
hard to
strengths
do.
alignment, it's so hard, but the more certainty you have about this is just who I am. Like, I'm not a person who likes social media. Well, guess what happens to trend with success on social media? Guess what? Nearly 100% of people who are excellent at social media also have in common with each other. They like it.
Mhm.
So we do not take as seriously things like our own intuitive choices because we are using we're using it's not incorrect necessarily because it's just a human natural thing to listen to people talk who have certainty and want to do whatever it is that they say you should do.
Yep.
Because in like a you're going to medical school, like if you want to become a surgeon, you should go to medical school. So we get a lot of that kind of there's a direct path, there's a very crystal clear pathway to get where we want to go. But in entertainment industries, it is not as secure of a path to success as it is in other industries. So we need to know that aligning yourself to the correct decisions is so much more likely to yield success when you're doing the stuff that you are the best at and not trying to do the things that other people are the best at. Because when you are the best at something, you are so much better. You're like outlier better than everybody else versus the sort of median middle, which is where the
Yeah.
majority of people find
I keep
that they
thinking
are.
about looking back at my career, just being in a position where, like, or being in the industry. I was in the tech industry for a long time, and at one point, it was just so soul sucking, and I know I needed to leave, but leaving is scary. I have a
Yeah.
job, it paid well, I was able to pay the bills, but I hated it. And
Yeah.
there are many nights where I was just laying up, anxiety ridden, just what am I going to do? And everybody who loves you, everybody who's close to you, they give you the advice. They don't want to see you hurt. But they want to make sure that you're comfortable and that you're secure and that everything's okay. But at a certain point, at least for me, like I had to jump. And
Yes, and because of the strengths you have, you're so high in responsibility. So your commitment to your family and to paying your own bills and their bills, right? Your
mhm,
commitment to stability and security for other people would be such a big deal that it will take somebody external helping you to understand how to parse through some of those things that you're telling yourself and whether or not they're really things you should be taking action on, right? So some of the things that we tell ourselves are sort of garbage information. They're just our natural survival mechanisms trying to help us have what it thinks is a better life, but they
totally
don't know
guilty.
that it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I could go down a rabbit hole here forever, but should we jump
yeah,
into the coaching,
yeah.
so that
Let's
people can
do it.
see what it's all about? All right, and then
Let's
I
do
mean,
it.
I've got more questions here. There's going to be questions in the comments, so
Yeah, and I'll try to answer the comment questions too as
okay,
we go along. If anybody has them, feel free to ask questions. But we're going
yeah,
to start out with for Alyssa, really quickly, I would take only the top 5 version first. The top 5 version is just 25 bucks. So take the cheaper version first, especially because you want to make sure this is a something that resonates with you, right? Like you need to read the report and see that it is a good thing and it resonates with you. And also, your top 5 are the source of most of your success and failure behaviors. So just focusing only on your top 5 is plenty. And like we have a whole bunch of videos for authors. I'll give you guys a link for it so you can go watch them. But so Jim's top 5, let's just I'll read them and then we'll talk a little bit about what they are. But Jim's top 5 are empathy, belief, learner, responsibility, and connectedness. And I have 2 of those. I have learner and connectedness high as well. So empathy, belief, learner, responsibility, and connectedness. So talk to me. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you questions like we would be
Okay.
coaching. What we're looking
Let's do it.
for are pain points and then upsides, right? And
Okay.
we want to talk about why both of those might be happening. And then what I'll do for everybody who's watching is I'll keep referring back to the strengths because they can't see what I can see. But so talk to me about, would you rather do writing or work? Like, would you rather talk about writing or work? Up
Writing.
to you. Okay.
I,
So
well, in a way, I want to say it depends on what's going on at work at that particular time.
yeah, that's true. That is true. But let's say, what is the easiest for you when you're writing? What's the easiest?
Oh gosh. Um, well, I think once I get into a flow state, the hardest is definitely starting. Um, but
Yes.
but once I get to that state of flow, then it becomes kind of blissful. And the
Yeah.
majority of my writing has to do with work stuff. That's just why one of the reasons why I love my job. Um, but sometimes it can take a while to get there, because I feel like sometimes I can have I get paralyzed because I know who my audiences are, and I start thinking about what they're going to think if I don't communicate it properly. Uh, this happens every single time, and I've recognized it, and I know that that's just part of the process. You're gonna toil away here. Nothing's gonna happen. You're gonna get all frustrated, and then it's gonna be like, ah, then it's gonna come out, and then I need to fix it.
So there's two things that are potentially going on there. One is you have a number 8 intellection, which even still in the top 10, 57% of writers have intellection high. And it doesn't mean that you should have intellection. It just means if you do, this is something to keep in mind. So when you
Okay.
want to think over and over to find certainty about something, beginnings of anything are hard. And they should be. They should actually be difficult because you need to think all the way around it in order to be able to start on it.
Hmm.
So if something pops into your head and you're like, oh, I have certainty about this, go write it, right? If you're high intellection, because that is the kind of certainty that we're all looking for. But what
Hmm.
happens with an election is there is a threshold of like, oh, I see it now. I see it now, that we want to try to get intellection people to as quickly as possible. So there are two things I usually suggest writers do when you have an election. One
Okay.
is you're probably not going to write every day. In fact, you're probably not going to write even when you're drafting consistently. You're going to get stuck consistently. But I
Yes.
still want them, yeah, right? Right. And because we're all told you should write every day, and Becca's like, no, you shouldn't. Actually, if you're high intellection,
It's
you should not be
counterintuitive.
writing every day. It's very counterintuitive. But what you should do is open the manuscript every day and ask, not do I know what to write? That is an open ended question. You ask, can I write the next sentence? That's the only question. It has to be very
Hmm.
specific and very limited. Because with
Hmm.
intellection, as soon as you ask open ended questions, or rhetorical questions are the
Uh-huh.
worst, never ask yourself rhetorical questions. What would happen if I did this? That's a too open ended of a question, right? For intellection, you want to ask very, very specific, do I know what the next sentence is? And you have to be sitting at the manuscript looking at the cursor to ask yourself this question. So the goal every single day is get the manuscript open as early in the day as possible and ask yourself, can you write the next sentence? And if you can't, what am I missing? Like, what's
Hmm.
missing from this place that would make me be able to write? Not down the road, not the next scene, not the whole character arc, but just the next sentence. And the reason that's so important is it disconnects something from the intellection's desire to go, I need to understand this whole entire book and all its themes and all the characters and all their emotions, which is a lot to get around, right?
Yeah.
And it becomes way more specific to a concrete detail, which is, do I know where these characters are actually headed? Like, do I know what they're doing in this exact moment? And when I can answer yes or no, and then if I ask myself, well, what am I missing? Is it they don't
Hmm.
know where they're going? Is it I'm in a transition and I don't know what's happening next. Okay, great. Now I got to go think about what's happening next. And that includes intellecting, right? Which can't be done while scrolling, which cannot be done on the internet. I know it has to be done. It either like, let's say, in the shower, in the car. Some of us literally lay on the floor and stare at the ceiling, so there's
Kind of
nothing
zone
in
out a
front
little
of us.
bit. Kind of
Mhm.
explains why, like, sometimes when I put something aside or I sleep on it, come back to it, and it's like right there.
Yep, that's exactly what you want, right? You don't know
Yeah.
what's going on here, so you wanna kick it to your intellection because your intellection is like a little hopper in the back of your brain that's always moving, and it's always trying to find certainty about stuff, which is why you also will randomly have these bursts of certainty about things that
Mm.
you were not consciously thinking about it, but you're like, "Oh, now I know what to do about this
Mm.
thing that I tabled 3 weeks ago." And also those of you who have an election, sorry to call you out like this. It's why you don't have answers in the meeting when you're in the meeting. You have answers 2 days later when you've thought about the meeting for 2 days, and all of a sudden you have the most brilliant thing that everyone could have
Oh,
used
yeah.
in that meeting. Yeah.
It's
Yep.
so eloquently in your head on the tip
Yeah.
of your
Yeah.
tongue, but 2
Yes.
days later.
Yeah, it's the intellection is thinking all the way around the situation and all the way around and all the way around. And if you don't know this about yourself, so many people think that this is an anxious behavior, that it's a learned behavior. They think that it's a downside, that it's a fight or flight mechanism. Like so many people blame this on
Mhm.
like bad things when the reality is if you understood what was happening in your brain. So I'll kind of paint you a picture. So imagine there's a gold nugget like down here somewhere,
Yeah.
and you're up on the top of the dirt. And the goal is to try to find wherever that gold nugget is down under the dirt. So many people are like, just blow everything up. The gold's down there somewhere. You'll get some gold and some dirt. You'll be fine.
Yep.
Which, if you're blasting copper mines, is fine. But if you're an archaeologist, you don't want to do that because that thing down there is a fossil and we want the fossil in its absolute perfect, pristine, gold, gold
Yeah.
plated, whatever. So somebody needs to be the person who's going to brush aside the dirt to get down to that place. And that's what intellection is doing every time it thinks over and over and over something. It's getting deeper into the understanding, and then when you finally reach that space where you understand it better or deeper, you have a product that nobody's going to get if they're blasting the side of the mountain with dynamite. You can only get that product by thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking until you understand
This
it.
is so enlightening. I'm like, "Oh, this explains a lot." Like, a
Yes.
lot of the
And
writing,
and
like, I'm thinking back to the last draft of digital press release I did right at the beginning. I had all this information, but it was just so much, and then finally, it was just, like, kind of, chipping away at that stone, chipping away, then it was like, "Oh, I get it. Okay."
yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you need to know, like, just from the perspective of somebody who has studied this for almost 2 whole decades now, right?
Yeah.
This is not a bug, it's a feature. This is not a bug. You're not broken because you do this. This is a valuable talent, not just that like the world needs, and so therefore we just have to put up with having it, but that this is how you write your best stuff. You
Mhm.
let your intellection chip away at it, chip away at it until you get to the space where you have that gold nugget. And then
Just let it do its thing.
just let it do its thing,
Okay.
and value it, because so much of what happens internally is when we don't understand something, we want to other it, right? We're
Yeah.
like, oh, I don't get
But
why I'm
Becca,
like this.
I have deadlines. I don't have time to think. I
Yes.
have to just
Yes. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's
okay, then get rid of your deadlines,
yeah,
because your
okay.
deadlines are inhibiting your best process, right? So,
Yeah.
like, Beth, you are so kind. I'm 45, so like I'm not, I wish I was 25. That would be amazing. But I also like I got obsessed with this really very quickly when I first heard about it. I was
Yeah.
in grad school, I had taken a test, and I grew up in a household where I was not like everybody else in my family. They were all very similar to each other, and I was the weird one. They wouldn't say that, but that's how it felt to me in terms of like how they motivate themselves and how they're successful. When I was 25, I had a 1 hour coaching session with a guy in grad school
Hmm.
who coached me on my strengths. And he was like, "Oh no, you don't like you're not doing it wrong. Like these are all things that you could be really excellent at if you would just lean into them." And they were things I had been trying to like cut out of myself for years because I thought they were the wrong way to be. And
Yeah.
then when I realized not just that they were right for me, but that they were right for other successful people, that other people had had a wild amount of success being wired this way. Just as a for instance, I don't have an executing strength. So strengths are into domains. So there's 4 domains, and one of them is
Hmm.
executing. That's the like get things done. You have belief and responsibility that are executing strengths. I don't have a single executing strength in my top 11. My
Hmm.
highest one is achiever. And I get more done, and my staff says this all the time. They're like, "You get more done than anybody I know." But the way that I get it done is not by being good at executing, it's by being good at relationship building, influencing, and thinking. Because I want to help people. I want to get the information out there. I want people to be more aligned. So I'll work 18 hours a day to get that done, but I'm not doing it from a place of being good at executing. If I don't know how
Yeah.
to motivate myself though, and I'm surrounded by executing strengths, then I'm not motivating myself correctly. I'm not aligning myself correctly. Whereas if I know myself, then all of a sudden I have an ability to be almost self-coached or self-led in a way that is unlike what I had previously, where I was creating a lot of cognitive dissonance internally and making myself feel bad
Yeah.
and trying to incorrectly motivate myself. Anyway, it's it is the best tool that I've ever found to do this kind of stuff. And it's not shaming or negative, which I think a lot of us are naturally shaming and
Yeah.
negating ourselves for this stuff, but it's very
Exactly.
empowering.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I want to unpack a little bit of that because there are two really good points that you just kind of eliminated for me anyway. One of them was like when you do get those frustrations, you need to understand that you might be butting up against one of your strengths, like the intellection, because I tend to
Yes.
overthink things a little bit. And if I just gave myself some more room instead of constantly trying to push that back so I can meet a deadline, for
Yeah.
example. But then the next point that you just hit upon is that if something that I thought would be a strength ends up further down, past 11, 15, 20, then it's okay. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Here's why: because your strengths are going to actually compensate for that and can possibly put that back to the forefront, like with you in your
Yeah.
ability to execute and achieve.
Yeah, you can still get things done, but it's not going to look like it will look if you are number one achiever, right? Like
Yeah.
when you listen to somebody who's number one achiever, and I'm 11 or 12, I think 11 maybe. Yeah, 11 or 12 achiever. But it's not high enough that you would even see it in my list, right? And so you look at the difference between somebody with number one achiever and then somebody like me, and you could not tell the difference between our output, but the way that we motivate ourselves and how we know when to say stop and how we know how to get more out of ourselves and how we deal with frustration when it
Yeah.
comes, right? All those things are totally opposite because if I have a number one achiever friend, they're internally motivated, I'm externally motivated. And if I don't know that about myself, then I'm going to try to motivate myself like them by saying things like, "You can do it. Believe in yourself. Just be more excited about your book." La la la. And it's like, no, that fire's not going to come from inside of me. It's going to
Mhm.
come from me partnering with other people. I have a lot of relationship building strength. It's going to come from me serving other people. I have a 2 Enneagram helper where a lot of my motivation is because I want to see other people thrive. And so, like for me, that motivation is different, but our outcomes might be the same, but how we motivate ourselves is opposite.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I noticed that like communication was number 20 for me, and
Right.
communications is in my darn title.
Yeah.
So,
But you
I'm
communicate,
fired.
having met you before, right?
Mhm.
Like I met
Yeah.
you, we met in person in Vegas. Having met you before, you communicate by being interested in other people and by asking them questions and by
Yeah.
thinking about how they're thinking and feeling when they are saying something, or how would my communication land with those people.
Hmm.
So you are communicating from a completely different space, but you could be, I have communication high, you could be a better communicator than someone with high communication just because of the way that you're doing it, like what's motivating you. So you could be better at the, let's say, the job of being a communications director than someone
Hmm.
with high communication, because you are better at managing the blue strengths, the relationship building strengths that you
Hmm.
have.
Okay.
So really quickly, let me answer a couple of these
Please.
questions. One is, my arranger is wherever my achiever is, they're back to back. So I have both arranger and achiever together, which is another executing strength.
Okay.
And then the other question was, um, about the weaknesses. Can my strengths actually win against my weaknesses? So what we find, and I'll use my own as an example. I don't want to do this to Jim because that's not fair. He didn't sign up
Go,
for this.
please. No, you
Um,
could.
are you sure? Because I can use one as
Yes.
empathy. Okay, so
You
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 made a
use me.
comment. You made a comment earlier with your writing that was a very empathy comment. So strengths are like nuclear power. They're the sources of our greatest strengths and our greatest weaknesses. So when you have a number one empathy strength, you know what people are feeling, you know how to talk to them, you know how to treat them the way that the way that they're actually feeling, in a way that will validate them and empower them and help them.
Mm.
But then also, empathy has this great weakness of not wanting anyone to feel negative emotions, right?
Hmm.
So when you have a hard truth that you have to deliver to somebody, a lot of
Yeah.
empathy people will struggle with wanting to deliver that hard truth, especially because you also have high harmony and high positivity. And harmony is, I want all the emotions to be in a range like a thermostat. I want everything to be at room temperature all the time emotionally.
Yeah.
That's when we get our most effective work done, right? And
Sure.
then positivity is, let's see the upside. Tell me the upside. What's the upside? So that combo can have a weakness sometimes if you don't manage that combo effectively, of not telling people hard truths, because they will feel negative emotions, and then I have to feel all their emotions if those emotions are bad, because
And you
I
do.
can't just not feel what people are feeling. If
Yeah.
you're high empathy, you're walking into a room of strangers or on a crowded street, and you can tell what everyone around you is feeling at all times. So that's both an incredible benefit to being a communications director, because you can shape messages and you can think of things that people without empathy wouldn't think of, like, how are people going to react to this, what's this going to produce in them, is there a way we can deliver this without hurting someone, things like that. Other people
Yeah.
won't be able to think about that, but the downside is it can make you not want to do hard things when it comes to, like, I need to fire somebody, I
Sure.
need to oh, put my characters through black moments in the books.
Mm.
Empathy people hate black moments in their books, because you're going to have to feel all those things that the characters are feeling. So a lot of empathies will get blocked right before they have to write the, like, rug pull into the black moment, and they don't know what's going on, but that's what it is, right? So
Yeah.
that is like the strength, and also can be a weakness if we don't
Sure.
manage that effectively.
Right. And I found that if I don't manage it effectively, it can be very exhausting and fatiguing at
Oh
the
yeah. Yeah.
end of a day, at the end of a week, at the end of a conference.
Yep. So, and knowing that, you now know how to manage yourself, because you know it's not reliable. It's not
Right.
realistic for me to expect that I'm going to go back to the office the day after I get back from, the Vegas conference, right? Like, that's 2,500 people, me being engaged with everyone at all times. I need a couple of days to be totally by myself, recenter, get caught up, like, but I have
Yeah.
to give that to myself because trying to make myself work like someone I'm not is not helpful. Like it's not going to get your best work out of you.
So true. Every time I come back, I'm just, the first day especially, I'm just done.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah. It even online webinars, sometimes it takes a lot of that emotional
Yeah, especially if you
energy.
can see everybody's comments, right? 'Cause
Yeah.
this is the thing that, like, people who can't see your face and you can't see theirs, they're like, "Oh, if I'm feeling something, then I'm safe." And I'm like, "Nope, empathy can feel you." Like, especially in number one empathy, like, you can feel people's emotions in their comments. I have a friend
Yeah.
who, like, I can give her a two-word sentence. Like, she'll ask me a question and I'll be like, "It's fine." And she can know exactly what I'm feeling to a pinpoint what I'm feeling with
Yeah.
one word or no words.
Everybody should have a friend like that.
Oh my gosh, it's gold. Like, just it's amazing. Empathy is such a superpower.
I
Yeah.
want to bring up Beth's comment
Yeah.
because I want to make sure I don't forget. Where do we go to take a strengths test? Can they go into Gallup from the Better Faster website?
You can actually go directly to gallup.com. In fact, I would
Okay.
the best way to do it, especially if you don't want to spend the $60 for the full test, is I would go to Google and I would literally just enter Gallup Strengths Top 5. And the very first thing that comes up should be the link to take just the top 5 versions. So that you take the same test, but what you're paying
Mhm.
for is essentially, do you want your full 34 results or do you want your top 5 results? You can just do the 20 bucks or the 25 bucks, I think it is, for the top 5. But I would go to Google because it's going to be the fastest way to get there. If you go into gallup.com, they don't want you to take the top 5 tests. They want you to take the full one because it's the best information and the most
There's a
accurate.
ton of information. I've been reading
It's so
through it, and it's
much
like,
information.
whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, Alyssa grabbed it. I'm like, there's always going to be a high input person who will go get the link for us. And
She's
I'm like,
quick. Alyssa's
someone will
super
grab
quick.
it. So
And
I
so is
love that.
Lexi.
I love that. Yeah. Thank you,
I
Alyssa.
want to I'm going to bring up this comment from Sarah too. And I popped it up here earlier as we were getting into the strength, my results. And Sarah, thanks for the comment. I'm just going to read it out loud for the people who are going to be listening to the podcast only. Sarah says, taking the strengths test and working with Becca and the other coaches was the best decision I've made with regards to my writing. Now I understand and accept why certain things work or don't work for me.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's huge.
Absolutely. And I'm only like 48 hours post test.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's actually, like, some of the people who are here, like, who are commenting, they've been
Mhm.
working on their strengths with me for a decade now, right? Because I first started coaching writers, when I was still just a fiction writer, not doing any
Yeah.
coaching with writers, and so, like, some of them have known and been working on their strengths forever at this point, and the depth of control that we have over ourselves and the information we have, and not just that, but like, I know where my blind spots are now. So, like,
Yeah.
I have a connectedness blind spot sometimes of, like, and I'm sure you might have this as well with both connectedness and positivity, but, like, I have a connectedness blind spot of, like, everything will be fine. Everybody's fine. Everybody's good. Like, we can trust everyone. They're just great
Yeah.
people. We
I'm
we
so
joke about
trusting. That's so true.
yeah. Yeah, like, we joke about how I'm a golden retriever. Like, I'm always just like, everyone's amazing. And
I just
yet
want to please
they're not.
everybody. I want you to like me.
Yeah. I want everybody to be happy and, like, and isn't this so much fun? But also, like, there's some really awful people out
The
there
house is
and
on
I
fire at the
can't.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, the house is on fire and I can't tell the difference.
Yeah.
So we also need people who have other strengths. But I have this blind spot about, like, not being willing to trust that it's possible for my read to be wrong because I so want everyone to be a better person than they are, a better friend than they are, a
Mhm.
better whatever, right? A better human being, a better participant in the world than they are. And I have a blind spot about it. But now I listen to my
Yep.
friends who ask me questions quicker in a way that I didn't used to because I've seen over time the way that connectedness works. it just makes me so much more likely to want to tell a good story, like to make meaning in a way that makes it sound like they're doing their best, or they're contributing, right? When
Yeah.
it's really like, you need to not be around this person anymore. They're not good for you. So I struggle with that, but the way that I do it is by knowing that connectedness, right?
Yeah, that makes perfect
Yeah.
sense. Um, I'm going to put up the link for the academy now to make
Yeah.
sure that people get it. The betterfasteracademy.com, because I mean, bang, we're already at time. Or we got
I
just
know.
like a minute.
I
I
know.
knew that was going to happen, especially for this session. So
Yeah.
betterfasteracademy.com. That's one of the links I want to share with everybody. But I also want to make sure that people go to your YouTube channel as well. And we should tell people too that the Better Faster Academy, you have a lot of content there and a lot of resources that don't cost a dime. There's a lot of stuff that you can gain from going to that website and
Yes.
diving
In
in.
fact, if you add the word links at the end of the betterfasteracademy.com, so do slash links on that, what it
Slash
has
links.
is it has a link to all the strengths videos. And we made a 45-minute video with 3 different writers who have whatever strength it is. So all
Mhm.
34 strengths have a video. And on betterfasteracademy.com slash links, you can watch your top 5 videos. And we specifically tried to get some different combinations of people. So, like, if you have a high empathy, we don't just want all empathy harmony people, right? We try to kind of get a diversity of viewpoints on that, so that you can hear, this is what this might sound like for writers in particular. So, like, if you have a responsibility or an activator or competition, we wanted you to be able to hear what writers who have that strength sound like and what they're doing, and how you might be able to align yourself in that way to listen to people. So that one is a really big resource. I hope people take advantage of. I hope they take the test. If
Yeah.
you do any of our stuff,
Take the
you'll take a
test.
test automatically. But just
Yeah.
even if you just take the test and go watch those links, like those videos,
Yeah.
that will be already, you'll be farther ahead than most people in your self development journey.
Yeah, and I just
Yeah.
wanted to bring up the YouTube link again. There's just a ton of really good content there as well. Is that where
Thank
the
you.
I'm forgetting the not quick cast,
Quick
quick
cast. Hmm.
quick cast. That's where
That
that
is the
is.
quick cast, yeah.
Okay.
And we do a lot of videos about kind of like uh um here's a pattern that we see in, like,
Yep.
maybe not, 80% of writers, but like a very specific subset. So, like, we have some videos for, like, people who are bread machine writers who've been told
Yep.
not to edit as they go, but they really, really need to edit as they go because they have this really specific type of brain. So we do a video on it, and a lot of those are on my TikTok channel, my archetypes videos. But we'll be like, hey, if you're wired this way, don't try to change this about yourself,
Hmm.
even though you may be getting advice that this is not something that quote unquote everyone should be doing. It's actually really good for a certain subset of people to do this and can produce success, even though you've been told not to do it. Because almost all of the things that we're told to do, we should be saying no to. And almost all the things that we get shamed into doing are not for us. Like, again, like, it's just the way that our
100%.
human brains work. Yeah. Yeah.
Silly humans. I wish we had like the rest of the day to hang out
I
with you.
know.
So will you
Yeah.
come back and see us sometime?
Of course. I'll come back anytime. I really do love doing a live video. And I especially, because I don't think a lot of people have seen someone get coached in their strengths about their writing
Right.
before. So I had asked Jim, and I appreciate that he'd let me do this. I had
Oh,
asked if it
totally.
was okay to coach him live so people could see what that looks like. But so much of coaching is, um, I need to hear you talk about your pain points, because what I'm looking for is, what can you not see about yourself? Like, what's happening in your brain that you are just accepting and not questioning, and how can we help shed a little bit of light on that and show you why this might be happening, and then give you some tools for how to combat the pain point, but not to change the way that your brain is wired, because you can't anyway. It's useless to try to work against that level of depth that these talents are wired into you. But how do we make them easier to find success with? So yeah, I'm happy to do part 2 anytime. And literally, I will coach whoever you want. We can do you again, because we really only talked about what's easiest for you.
It's all
So like,
about me.
I was going to say there's still many
all
more
about
things
me.
we can do. Yeah, that would be great.
we could get somebody else on. That's fine. But open invitation to you, Becca.
Thank you.
Everybody else, we really appreciate you being here. I'm going to go through the usual closing statements, and those are: if you really like this episode, please like, share it across the socials. If you'd like, comment and subscribe to the channel, because when you subscribe, it helps us attract awesome people like Becca to be on the show. And then to see what's coming up next, be sure to bookmark d2dlive.com so you can see what next week's episode and guest and topic is going to be all about. And finally, if you are an aspiring author, Becca, I know that you are an author, but for those of you who are aspiring authors, why not go and sign up for your free Draft to Digital account today simply by visiting drafttodigital.com. Becca, if you wouldn't mind hanging out in the green room for a few more seconds, I'm just going to play a really quick 30-second commercial spot. For everybody else, thank you so very much for joining us here today. We really appreciate you viewing, chiming in, commenting, asking questions. All of that interactivity makes these episodes so much better. So again, thanks everybody very much. Thank you, Becca. We'll see you here next week.
Ebooks are great, but there's just something about having your words in print. Something you can hold in your hands, put on a shelf, sign for a reader. That's why we created D2D Print, a print-on-demand service that was built for you. We have free, beautiful templates to give your book a pro look, and we can even convert your ebook cover into a full wraparound cover for print. So many options for you and your books. And you can get started right now at drafttodigital.com.